Right now, the Chinese economy has become even more unstable than it had during the 2008 global economic crisis of capitalism. During that period, the way out for China was to push through a stimulus package similar to what the United States had. The Chinese spent 4 trillion won, or $590 billion US. Unfortunately for Chinese capitalism, it was not enough. As things began to get worse, the closure of exporting businesses, dramatic rise in unemployment, and social unrest, they responded by increasing the stimulus by another 2.7 trillion over the next 2 years. The byproduct of this continued stimulus has been 2 trillion in debt for local governments and a dangerously large real estate speculation bubble that has to be taken care of immediately by raising the interest rates in order to slow the economy. This has caused China's public liabilities to be 70 to 80% of their GDP. There are two great problems facing China right now. One, the high cost of basic necessities and raw materials. Now, this was caused by the quantitative easing by the US Federal Reserve. China, out of necessity, responded to these measures, hurting them by keeping the value of their currency low. The US responded by calling them a currency manipulator. Two, as the living standards of the people in the US and Europe are destroyed by austerity measures, these people are unable to purchase the cheap commodities of China. This drags the Chinese economy down even more. China needs to stay a production of cheap commodities. This cheapness must always be held lower than the US and Europeans, meaning the Chinese working class always has to stay below the first world working class in a permanent global lower class. This drive for cheap exports while facing inflation that would crash the economy is all because of the inability of Chinese people to purchase enough domestically. The domestic market is too weak due to overwhelming poverty perpetuated by the capitalist system in China. Let us face what the Chinese government is today: the ideal capitalist mechanism. The economic engine of the Chinese economy is cheap labor that produces cheap goods to the entire first world. As a result, its currency must always be adjusted according to the US dollar in order to remain cheap enough to compete. There's an extremely limited social services available to the people. The government also provides a totalitarian regime protection for the wealthy people by beating the population into production and to force them to shut up in case they ever want to challenge this power. Unfortunately for China, other economies have appeared to challenge their position as the world's pool of cheap labor. Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India, for example.